Hi Scott, how are you?
I'm great, Joshua. What is the belt behind you, sir?
It's a WWE Championship belt. So one I got signed a few years ago by John Cena and a couple of others. So
That's
kind of pride
amazing.
and joy.
That's
Oh,
amazing, bro.
thank you so much. I love your background there as well. I'm gonna have to go back later and look at some of the books you've got. I always find that so interesting.
Oh, right on. Thanks. Yeah, you know, I've got. It always bums me out when I go. We shoot in a lot of locations, and sometimes you use people's homes, right? And I'm amazed when you go in and see no books in people's houses. I don't understand it.
I know. That's my wife has got a library actually up in her office, and I've got you can't see it. I've got a wall of graphic novels and books in front of me. So yeah, you got to have books in life, you know?
Thank you for being a reader. Thank you.
Well, it is, like I said, such a pleasure to speak to you, particularly for this project, and I would love to know to begin with, what was it that drew you to Malcolm's story, as this recently widowed pastor and father?
Yeah. There were a lot of things that drew me to it. The first thing was the simplicity of it. I know you're a comic book movie guy, but there's no superheroes, there's no guns, there's no aliens coming out of the ground. We're not all living under a dome. It's just a very simple story, really well told, with flushed out, interesting characters. Um, but for me, this was an interesting opportunity. And this is going to sound strange. I sort of feel like I'm examining the role my father had when I was growing up. I am one of three boys. I lost my mother when I was 15 years old, so very similar age to the character Flora, that is Malcolm's oldest daughter. So to be able to step into shoes that were that are as similar as the ones that my father wore after losing his wife and my mom at similar ages is somewhat cathartic, I have to say. But that was interesting to me. Look, I like this is the kind of television that I watch, whether it's shows that I've been on, like Felicity, or shows that I was just a fan of, like 30 something and Parenthood and Friday Night Lights. There's no complications here aside from the human condition, and to me, that's the most interesting.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. And I'm glad you mentioned the characters because they do feel so authentic. So was that something you had to spend a lot of time developing? Was that in the script already, as you started to find who Malcolm was as a character?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I think the script was very well crafted and thought out when it comes to the characters. Obviously, I bring my work to the character, which is obviously presence and backstory. And so creating a backstory for Malcolm, sort of independent of the little that had been set up, was really interesting to do. And, Malcolm he's not that much different from you and I. The whole faith thing when it comes to this show is really interesting too, because it was pitched to me before I read the script as a faith-based show, and I thought, wow, what does that mean? Is that going to alienate people? Is it going to bring in more viewers? What I don't understand. And then I read it, and at least in the pilot, the only real, aside from him being a pastor, being a faith leader, I didn't feel that it was rammed down my throat, that it was really heavy-handed. And I appreciated that, because I feel that if you are a person, a family, a faith, of religion, then there's something relatable for you here. There's enough. If you're not, it's not going to get in the way. It just happens to be a job he has. So I found that duality really interesting.
Yeah, and I completely agree. It does feel like a very welcoming series for everyone, and particularly, obviously, it's a great drama, but a great comedy. And I love the bar scene where Malcolm blurts out that his wife is dead. To find that right balance of comedy and the heavier dramatic moments. I know
Yeah,
you've done roles like this before, but how was it for you on this particular one?
I love it. It comes naturally to me. I'm such a fan. I'm a believer in everyday life as entertainment, and obviously you have to heighten it a little bit with storylines and characters, but the the duality of the comedy and the drama of there's a reason that people say, it was as funny as a fart in church. Like, that's funny, you know? And there's comedy to be found everywhere, as there is drama. And the fact that the writers were able to balance that so well and understand the right places for the humor to sort of rear its head is nice.
Yeah, for sure. And to be playing this parent who obviously is navigating being a single parent and the modern parenthood of social media and everything he has to deal with as a dad was that something you could tap into being a parent yourself? It was quite easy to figure that out with the kids you're working with on this on
Yeah.
film on the series.
Yeah. Yeah, you understand that. I mean, I've got three kids myself. I have a 16, 13, and 11-year-old. Um, so I'm very and I'm a pretty hands-on dad, so I'm pretty adept when it comes to talking with, dealing with, trying to understand what's going on with them. Um, and so, look, I also understand that the youngest of my kids is played by Carrie Christopher, who I believe is 10 or 11 in real life. I have an 11-year-old. But the way I talk to my 11-year-old is very different than the way I talk to my 16-year-old. So if you don't know, if you haven't had both an 11 and a 16-year-old, you don't know that. And you just don't. And or you can understand it, but I say to my 11-year-old, "Hey bud, get the door for me while I'm getting the trash." And I say to my 16-year-old like, "Yo, get the trash out of here. What are you doing?" There's just a different language, and to have that in me and to be able to bring that to set was just an added benefit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love those scenes with the kids. They're three real talents or five real talents, or all the kids in the show. But of course, many of your scenes with Erin, the
Yeah.
process of building that friendship and how it evolves over the course of the episodes I've seen. What was that like for you to work with her and to figure out that dynamic between the two characters?
I'd never even met Erin before, which is strange after 30 years in LA and her about the same amount of time. We sort of had, she's gone more of the comedy direction and I have done more dramatic stuff. Um, but from the jump, I could tell she was down to earth. She's got a couple kids herself. She's a hardworking actress who made her own way, and I have a lot of respect for her, and I think vice versa. Um, and man, she brought her A game. Some of my favorite moments in this show are not just scenes that she's in, but just little moments, little blips that she has that are that really make the character pop. And there's one that I always point to, which happens in the first episode. After Malcolm and Lori have their makeout in the car and he drops her back off, she walks in and is immediately confronted by her son Merritt, who asks where she was, and he's like, Hey, you're missing an earring." And her reaction, she just kind of reaches up to touch it, and she's like, "Huh," and she doesn't really say anything, and then she walks away. It's so simple and brilliant and natural and normal, and to be able to bring that on a set with kid actors and lights and crew and just she was so in the moment, and I really lean on her for a lot.
Oh, awesome. Like, can't wait for people to see you two together. And, you mentioned some of the comedies you've worked on. And I have to bring up Scrubs was a favorite of mine. They're obviously bringing it back now in a couple of weeks' time. But do you think, I'm not sure if you can say, do you think we'll see more of Sean? Would you like to go back to Sean or?
I would love it. I would. It's so funny. Someone else asked me, and I just was cleaning up my. I didn't want to show too much, but this.
Oh, wow.
Look at that old shot.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I I would love to go back. I love the character of Sean. I've had the good fortune of working with Bill Lawrence, not just on Scrubs, but then I did Cougar Town and I did Undateable.
Yeah.
He and we made Whiskey Cavalier in the Czech Republic together. So we've had a long history of working together. Zach has asked me to come back. I actually got a call right when they were starting production. They had me scheduled for an episode and we couldn't work the schedule out. So I'm sure we'll find a time.
Oh, fingers crossed. And of course, Scream 7, there's another franchise you return into. That must be exciting too.
Man, oh man, the legs that show has, huh? Like that movie is ubiquitous. Like you can't get away from it. People love it everywhere I go. And it was a movie that I was sort of um reprimanded to a certain degree for doing when I did. Like, I was on Felicity and it was during one of our hiatuses and a real actor would have gone and done a play, right? But I went and did Scream. I'm so grateful now, looking back, just to be a part of a franchise like that, a beloved franchise, one that has so many fans still, and to come back in seven, like I haven't read a script, I haven't seen the movie, but I was so happy to be a part of it, man.
Oh, well, I cannot wait for people to see that. But more importantly, I cannot wait for people to see It's Not Like That because I think this is a really special series and I think people are going to find so much in it to love. So thank you so much for your time, Scott. It's been such a pleasure as a fan of yours.
Thanks, Josh. It was great to meet you and great to hear your opinion. I appreciate it.
Great to meet you as well. Thanks again for your time. Have a great
Okay.
day.
You too.